Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you are listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Ohio Bobcats, who finished 10-3 in 2023 and capped off their season with a win over Georgia Southern Eagles in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring game on April 20th. We have a special guest joining us today. He was born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago. He is the voice of the Ohio Bobcats. He is Russ Eisenstein. Russ can be found at Russ Eisenstein on X. Welcome to the show, Russ.
What's up, boys? How are we?
We are great. We are ready to talk about football. Football's right around the corner. Bring on football season.
Absolutely. Exciting time for sure across the country. Exciting here in Southeast Ohio, too. This program is on a solid foundation from Frank Solich now to Tim Albin, and we'll see what the Bobcats can do here in 2024.
Well, there are a lot of unknowns heading into 2024, but first let's tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into broadcasting.
Yeah, a lifelong passion. Knew I wanted to be a sports broadcaster when I was 4 years old. My father was a broadcaster as well, small towns in Kentucky and Indiana, and didn't get that big break, but that can happen, luck of the draw. And so very fortunate to have my parents that have been, my biggest fans. And so got into it very early and decided that that's what I wanted to do. And so been all over Illinois, worked in Bloomington, Illinois, down in Carbondale. I'm a proud Southern Illinois Saluki. Grew up a Northern Illinois fan, so NIU is always important to me. But grew up a MAC fan, a Missouri Valley fan, so I know all about the MVC and FCS football for sure. Was a voice at Idaho State for a year after two seasons in the NBA, working for the Hornets, now Pelicans, when they were in Oklahoma City. Talk shows, TV shows, all that. And for the past 16 years, the voice of the Bobcats, and it's been a heck of a ride. I've been able to put my words to some of the greatest moments in Ohio University athletics history. Excited about the future, as I recently announced that I'm stepping away, being the voice of the Bobcats, but really, really proud of what we were able to do here, what I was able to do here, and really looking forward to my future in broadcasting.
Awesome. For those not familiar with the Bobcats' offensive style, how would you describe it to them?
Yeah, it's been a really fun offensive style. When you take a look at the development of things, there was a watershed moment back in Frank Solich's tenure here. I broadcasted all but one of the division winners. Derek Scott, who's at South Carolina now, does a great job there. He was a former voice of the Bobcats. He called the division winner in 06. But every other one for me has been 09 to 11, 16, 22. And so this is an offense that changed a bit. Before, and folks that knew Frank Solich in Nebraska, it was power running and very physical offenses. But if you look at what Ohio was able to do, spreading the ball around, multiple receivers, a whole lot of fun, that started to change when Frank Solich and Tim Albin realized, we might need to do something different. And so credit to Frank Solich, a Hall of Fame head coach, the winningest head coach in Mid-American Conference history, and his staff at that time to being relatable to what college football was, adaptable to making that change. And so what Tim Albin did as an offensive coordinator is still have faith in the run. That's always going to be a part of what Ohio's been able to do. But we've had some gunslinging quarterbacks as well. The Rourkes, Nathan Rourke and Curtis Rourke, Curtis now at Indiana, and some really good wide receivers. And so when you look at Ohio from a fun standpoint, yeah, Ohio's been a really fun offensive team, intertwining everybody. Really, the tight ends have been a big part of what Ohio's done. Ohio's gone to them quite often. Really good wide receivers that have made plays. And then the running backs, there's a strong tradition of running backs here behind a good offensive line. So every box that you'd want to check, Ohio's been able to check, most certainly in my time here, and hopefully in the future too.
Well, let's get to that position where it all starts on offense. So that's the quarterback. You mentioned Curtis Rourke transfers to Indiana. CJ Harris, who's their number 2, early in the season is off to Cal. Parker Navarro returns with some game experience, including starting their bowl game for the Bobcats this last year. Is it safe to say this is Parker's job going into the season?
Yeah, most certainly, and he deserves it. We'll see when that ultimately is announced officially, but he did represent the program, he and Jeremiah Wood at Mid-American Conference Media Days. And I'm so happy for Parker because he had to go through a couple of really tough injuries. And you talk about betting on yourself in a career or in a football playing career. Well, he most certainly did it. He's from Tempe, Arizona, transferred from UCF, came here knowing that, hey, there's a guy named Curtis Rourke who's in front of me. It's probably his job, but I'm going to learn under a good offensive system and try to get better. And his time is going to come. Well, it came. And he was a game manager in the bowl game. And I asked him at Media Day if the offense is going to be opened up a little bit more to show all of his skill set this year based on the success of the bowl game. He said, yeah, he's excited about it. He's smart. He's mature. He's a good guy that I think a lot of people could root for. And so he was a game manager in the bowl game. And I can figure that he's going to be a game winner when big plays are going to be made with his legs and with his arm. Sometime in this season, he's going to be a guy to be able to do it.
Well, those who are not familiar with Navarro, can you describe his game for us?
Yeah, he's a really smart and cerebral quarterback. And much like I said, he can make plays with his legs and with his arm. When we saw him after he transferred, you could tell that the arm strength was really good. He's about the same height as me, around that 6 foot mark, but he uses that height to his advantage. I think he's pretty elusive. And this is an offensive line behind offensive line coach Alan Rudolph, who's a high-ranking coach within the offensive system, right, and with this team. He has faith in that offensive line. And, yeah, we'll talk about the transfer portal and what that's done to Ohio. But I think Navarro knows that he could have faith in the development of guys with this coaching staff. And so he's smart enough to know that he's not going to be needed to make all of the plays, but he knows that he could put other players in position to make those plays. And I'll mention an interview that we did before the bowl game. It was the day before the bowl game in Myrtle Beach. And he admitted that he was a little nervous. I mean, we all would be, right? I mean, he's starting in a bowl game. But he said the excitement was going to carry him through and his belief in this program. So he says all the right things, and he believes those things too. So I think he's got a lot of his game to be able to put on display against Syracuse, against Kentucky, against South Alabama, and everybody else on the schedule. I'm excited to see what he could do with a full year, and I'll knock on wood here. Hopefully good health for him because he deserves it.
Yeah, I was really impressed with his legs in that game, right?
Yeah.
Like, just juking folks, and he made a couple of really long runs. So I know I'm definitely excited to kind of see what he can do with the full season ahead.
And to your point, your guys' point about what has the offense been like, these quarterbacks have been put in position to use all of their faculties, all of their skill set. And I'm not just talking about Curtis and Nathan Rourke. I'm going back to Theo Scott back in 2009 and the J.D. Spragues and the Greg Wyndhams. And Ohio tried some things with the tight end, turned quarterback, turned tight end with Phil Bates. So I'm name dropping a lot on you guys, but that's to show there have been quarterbacks that have been able to use their skill sets in this system. And it's really taken on great work with, obviously, Nathan and Curtis Rourke, and now hopefully into the Parker Navarro era here in 2024.
Moving over to the running game, the Bobcats lost their top 2 running backs to the portal. Cy Bangura is off to Minnesota. Rashawn Allison is off to Austin Peay. But they returned Ricky Hunt. And Ricky Hunt broke out in a big way in that bowl game. They also returned Nolan McCormick, and they bring in Anthony Tyus III from Northwestern. Yeah. And like I said, Hunt had that huge bowl game, 17 carries, 115 yards, 4 touchdowns rushing. And then as we saw in the intro video, he had that one catch for 18 yards and a touchdown. So 5 total touchdowns. I know Luke and I are super excited to see what the 2024 holds for Ricky Hunt. Is it safe to say, he's kind of the leader in that running back room?
Yeah, and that's absolutely. That's the interesting thing about the portal, right? Because yes, it's very well documented that a number of players did good work here, had great performances here, were coached up the right way, had success that other programs would want them. And good on them for having the opportunity, because we're all rooting for them to have great success. The guys that you mentioned. But the other part about that too is the development of this program and the recruiting that's been done. there are veterans, there are guys that have had good performances largely in every other aspect of this team. In every position group, you could point to at least a guy or two. And some position groups were hit harder than others. But in the running back room, you talk about Ricky Hunt, and he keeps the tradition going of that 405 tradition here. So Tim Albin is an Oklahoma native. 405, I think for the bulk of the state of Oklahoma, is the area code of Oklahoma. And so Tyler Tettleton and Bo Blankenship and Dante Foster, those are the 405 connection. And I have a 405 number myself. And so I always thought that was so cool for them to come from Oklahoma, have a head coach who's now from Oklahoma. Obviously, he was the OC back then, and to keep that tradition going. And I informed Ricky about that. And I said, hey, you better watch some highlights of guys from your home state. And he's proud of that, proud of the lineage and connection. And you look at his body type and what he's able to do. He's nimble. He can make a one-handed catch, which he did in the first touchdown of that game. He could take contact. And, yeah, he's on all the schedule cards and all the promotion for the season because he had a great bowl game. He deserves it. And for a guy that hasn't had a whole lot of run, yeah, he's a veteran. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he could do in a full season.
Do you think this coaching staff, like we've seen like last year, where maybe it was a much more of a shared backfield, right? But then you go to 2 years ago where Bangura just kind of went nuts. Yeah. What do you think the coaching staff would prefer to do, given that if they have the options to do it?
If you look at the really successful years at Ohio, and there have been a lot of them now, you have seen guys that have filled spots, given guys a little bit of a rest. You mentioned Nolan McCormick there. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife of sorts, comes in when needs to be in there. So Ohio's just always been able to find guys to be able to run the football. And you go back to A.J. Olette. That was back in 2013, 2014 when he came in, and I didn't even know how to pronounce his last name. But he was so far down on the depth chart at that time that he came in and helped win the game in the opener against Kent State. Now he's doing great work in the CFL. And Tim Albin was the running backs coach under Frank Solich. And so Calvin McRae, who is such a guy of reverence here at Ohio, and he was here before I got here. My first season was 2008. These running backs have been coached up really, really well. And that's continued over the years. So I don't know exactly who it's going to be, but I know there's going to be a time where Ohio's going to need a change-up running back, and we've had them over the years here, and I know that 2024 there's going to be somebody else. I don't necessarily know who it is yet, but there's going to be somebody there who's going to get some hard-earned yards and run and some touchdowns for this ball club.
Well, the passing game will look a lot different in 2024. All MAC first-teamer Sam Wiglis is off to the NFL. Miles Cross, Tyler Walton, Jacoby Jones, they've all transferred out. Chase Hendricks is the leading receiver coming back from this 2023 room. He had 11 receptions for 108 yards last year. How did this group look in the spring? What are your expectations for this group heading into 2024?
It's interesting, too, because the continuity with this program has been the amazing thing over the years. And so I think Ohio was the exception as opposed to the rule when it's come to keeping coaches for the long term. Obviously, it's a brand new era with the transfer portal now than ever. But there's probably more change at Ohio than any other MAC school. And that could be okay. Dwayne Dixon was a legendary wide receiver coach here. And he has stepped away from the program, and we've got to honor everything that he was able to do. Played for Steve Spurrier at Florida, and he played in the Arena League and set all the records. And if you looked at Coach Dwayne's fingers, I mean, they were just kind of mangled from all the catches that he made in the Arena League. You're in Iowa, and so you know about the Arena League with the Barnstormers and all that. And so I mentioned Dwayne Dixon because he helped make so many of these wide receivers. Now you've got Andre Allen, a very successful assistant coach. This is his first year. And so really, in a lot of ways, if there's going to be a change with the wide receivers from a personnel standpoint, this would be the year to do it with the new assistant coach to take over that side of the ball in that position group. So I think they're all going to learn together. But the names that you mentioned there, they were all developed in this system. And yes, other programs wanted them, and they're going on to great things, hopefully. And you mentioned Miles Cross. He's going to work with Curtis Rourke at Indiana, so I think that's pretty cool. But you mentioned Chase and some other guys that are going to be in there. I'm looking forward to seeing who it is that Coach Allen develops under this system, because it's happened before, and it will happen again here.
Well, moving over to the tight ends, for someone that has not ever caught an Ohio Bobcat game, how would you describe the tight end usage in this offense?
Oh, man. There have been so many highlights from the tight ends over the years. The utilization of the tight end with this system is really, really fun. And you saw the development of that. And guys that have hit the transfer portal, Tyler Foster, I said his name 3 times in the highlight of the catch in the Arizona Bowl and the win over Wyoming, because I wanted to make sure he got all the credit for that catch, because he deserved it. It was a tremendous catch, back corner of the end zone, hooked up with C.J. Harris, and it was one of the more iconic moments in this program's history. And so if you're looking at this program as a tight end and you're wondering how does that program utilize that position, do they value that position more than a blocker? Yeah, they sure as heck do, because you can make highlight plays in this system. And so we'll see who rises in that depth chart. But I'm pretty sure it's not going to change. The Will Kazmareks and the Tyler Fosters and going back to the guys that we've had here, Jordan Thompson and others, Andrew Mooney back to my first year here. So Ohio's utilized them. They're names that people have known. They've been put in positions to not only block, but also make plays. And we're not sure who's going to rise up in that depth chart this year, but Ohio's going to use them for sure.
Well, let's move over to the offensive line. They lost their left guard, Kurt Daniker, and right tackle Shadrick Rhodes Jr. To the portal this offseason. However, they do return their left tackle, their center, and their right guard. You said that Ohio wants to run the ball. Do you have any concerns going into 2024 with this line, or what are you thinking here?
Alan Rudolph, I think, is one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. He does a great job. He's a tactician. He gets on them for sure, but he loves them up too. Guy with CFL pedigree. And so it's a 3-down league up there, right? So you better teach up your offensive linemen on the professional level well. And he did. And I think that he can anchor with Parker Titsworth, Ohio center. Just a fun-loving guy. He embraces, obviously, his last name and his number and all that. I mean, he's just a really good guy and also a really good offensive lineman. And so it's going to start with him. And I have full faith that Alan Rudolph is going to be able to develop this offensive line. And again, much like we talked about, there are guys that have moved on. And it's unfortunate because Kurt Daniker went down to Baylor, just a really good ball player, really good family. But he sustained another injury there. And so he recently announced that he's stepping away from football. But the great thing about an Ohio education, and even the time when he was at Baylor, he's a really smart guy who will go on to good things. So if you look at Ohio's offensive line room over the years, these are really smart guys. They've got a really good coach in that position room. And yeah, it's going to be anchored by Parker, and we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see who steps up.
Well, I think we've already kind of talked about probably the 2 prime candidates for this question, but if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would you pick?
It sounds like I'm taking the easy way out here, and I don't mean to, but what Parker Navarro does with his grasp of this offense, with him having a full year, hopefully, of health, of good production, I'm really looking forward to seeing how Ohio utilizes his skill set. Is it really going to be the same way? And if you look at the height of Parker and Nathan Rourke, they're very similar. And I think their skill sets are very similar. And his exuberance and his excitement to be the leader that he is, I'm excited to see what he could do with this offense, because giving him a chance to have a full, healthy season, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. And so, yeah, it might be a bit of a cop-out to say, yeah, it's the quarterback. But in this case, it's the quarterback, and I'm excited to see what Parker can do.
Yeah, I don't think it's a cop-out at all. I mean, like, if folks hadn't seen the bowl game, they wouldn't even know anything about him, period. So, yeah, I mean, you can't – yeah, absolutely. I think him and Ricky are both probably in for big seasons.
Sure.
Well, let's move over to that defensive side of the ball. There'll be a new defensive coordinator here in 2024. Nowitzki's off to Memphis to be the D-line coach, but the new DC is John Hauser. He was the safeties coach for Ohio last year. Is it safe to see that we're going to see him stick with this 4-3 defense here in 2024, or what are your expectations?
Absolutely. And I think the amazing thing about what Ohio did last season was the development of these players in this program. You know, Bryce Houston and Keith Thompson were linebackers that anybody on any level would want to have in their program, not only on the field, but how they represented this program in the classroom, in the community, and through national interviews or whatever else. They are who this program is, and there will be more Bryce Houstons and Keith Thompson. Bryce Houston is going to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company at some point in his business life. I guarantee you that. I mean, he didn't need football to have success. He just loves football so much, and he was so good at it that he just kept on playing. And Keith Thompson at Pitt, to be able to move on to the next level, there will be others for sure, and we'll talk about the candidates. And John Hauser and Spence Nowinski worked together at Miami. John Hauser has ties to Joe Novak and Northern Illinois and the program there. And I mentioned Coach Novak because he built that NIU program into what it is now. And Coach Hauser was a part of that moving forward too. And so this guy comes in with a really good mindset and a really good idea of how to run a defense. And yes, Spence Nowinski deserves that opportunity at Memphis and what he did at Miami. But John Hauser needs to have mention here about what he was able to do to move the parts around in that system. And that was a dominant D. That was one of the best D. And I followed MAC football my whole life. And there are some teams that you could point to and say, gosh, you know, that 0-3 defense at NIU, maybe some others, Western Michigan in 16. But that defense last year was one of the best MAC defenses ever, bar none, period. And Ohio had the only shutout in bowl history in the MAC, 2018 in the Frisco Bowl. Well, 27-0, Ohio beat San Diego State. So anybody that had a part of this defensive system last year deserves a great deal of credit. John Hauser deserves a great deal of credit. I'm excited to see what he can do with restocking what Ohio's been able to do, even with the transfer portal.
Well, let's talk about some of the positions that are going to make up that defense for Coach Hauser. And go over the defensive line. They lost a lot of production to graduation, but they do return Bradley Weaver, who had a team-leading 6 sacks and 13 tackles for loss last season. What can you tell us about this defensive line as we head into fall camp?
Yeah, there are guys, as we talk about, in every level of this defense that have produced. You know, Bradley Weaver is just a beast. I mean, he can hit, he could wrap up. He's very well schooled, has a really, really good mind for the game. And so he is, just like a lot of the others that we've had here, just really, really, really good, fundamentally sound. You know, Tremaine Scott on Ohio's coaching staff was a player here that made big-time plays in the early 2010s. He was a part of the win in the Independence Bowl over Louisiana Monroe in 2012, right? So he has buy-in to this program. And so he's been able to coach guys up like a Bradley Weaver. And then you move back to the linebackers in the secondary, and we'll talk about that. But Bradley Weaver is a guy that has an all-MAC sort of ability about him. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he could do this year.
Well, let's look at that linebacking group. They lost their top 2 tacklers from a year ago. Both made the all-MAC first-team defense last year. You mentioned them earlier, Bryce Houston, Keith Thompson. They've both graduated, or Bryce Houston, he graduated, Keith Thompson off to Pitt. Jay Taylor returns with the most game experience from a year ago. They also bring in Blake Leak from Bucknell and Reese Collier from UAB. He joins the team after the spring. How did the linebacking group look in the spring, and what should we expect from this group going into 2024?
Yeah, I love Shea Taylor. First off, he's a hard hitter. He's a ball hawk as a linebacker. He's always around it. And if you take a look at his performance last season in the bowl game, he just jumps off the tape, right? And the theme here is talking about the pedigree of this program. And that linebacker room has been consistent over the years. The production, the skill sets, the mind for the game, all of it. So yes, that's a big loss when you lose Bryce Houston and Keith Thompson. But they were developed in this system. And I think Shea Taylor has every ability to be one of the best linebackers on this level of college football this year. I excited about what he can do. And when I talk about this defense, I get goosebumps talking about it because I know all the work that they put in, all the success that they put in, and all of the work that this coaching staff was able to instill in them, the knowledge of the game. And I think the next step is for Shea and whoever else is around him. The linebackers, they set the tone last year. I think the strength from a veteran nature is in the secondary, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But when you have a stud like Shea there in the middle, I think that's a pretty good piece to build around.
Yeah, I mean, the thing when we were preparing for this interview, the thing that stuck out to me the most is, you have three guys that really kind of, broke out in the bowl game with Parker, Ricky, and Shea. And I don't know, that's just pretty cool to see as heading into the new season.
Absolutely, for sure.
So moving over to that defensive backfield, they lose the likes of Walter Reynolds, Torrey Cox Jr., and Justin Burchett. Cox is off to Illinois while the others graduated. They do bring back a fair amount of guys with game experience like Austin Brawley, Adonis Williams Jr., Jeremiah Wood, Roman Parody, and Tank Pearson. Yeah. What should we expect from this group here in 2024?
They all can make plays. I mean, they're a really fun group to be around and to watch. And yeah, to your point, there were names that moved on, but that's the most veteran part of this team, really, from a position group. If we're talking about the DBs, if we're talking about the secondary, Roman Parodi is from the Miami area. It was really cool that Ohio played FAU in back-to-back seasons, and he wanted to have a big game against FAU, and he produced. So Ohio, when we talk about recruiting, is Ohio a type of program that can recruit in South Florida? Boom, you mentioned Torrey Cox, and he's moved on, and we wish him great success as well. But Roman Parodi stayed around, and he can make plays. He had a pick six against Bowling Green last year. That was a game that it felt like Ohio won like 100-0 in that game. It was done in the first half, and Bowling Green went on to have a great year. And so that adds to, the weight of what Ohio was able to do on homecoming, no less, at BG. So that was really fun. But the secondary, you mentioned Austin Brawley, and I know you'll have a conversation with him, but he's a guy from Massillon. You talk about a legendary high school program and a guy that expects to win. We talked, he and I last year, Ohio had a turnover belt last year. He said, that's my belt. I go into every game. And it wasn't about arrogance. He said that belt belongs to me. I'm going to have a turnover caused and a pickup in every game. He wanted to anyway. And he had to battle through injury too. So that moxie, that confidence from the high school program to here. And then Jeremiah Wood. Jeremiah Wood is almost as old as I am. I mean, he came in here in 2018. That's pre-pandemic, right? And so he's an engineering major. He's really, really smart. He represented the program with Parker at Mac Media Day. And I'm excited to see him in his final season. He's excited too. And so the strength of this defense has moved to the backside now in the secondary. And they can cause turnovers. And when Ohio's had success, they have had big time plus when it comes to turnover ratio. They had it last year, one of the best defense in the country, and that's going to continue this year. And they're good enough and they're deep enough that they could gamble and make plays. They did last season, and I think in the secondary, they could do that again this year.
All right, Russ. Well, we asked you on the offensive side who your breakout was. So let's move it over to that defensive side. Who is your breakout performer here in 2024?
Yeah, to build on it and the conversation that we had there, I had two guys, right? Austin Brawley, as we talked about, Shea Taylor, another, because you've got signs of what they were able to put on tape and show you in games last season. Now, hopefully it's a year of full health. And again, that's what everybody talks about, right? Can these guys have the health luck? And sometimes you get bad luck. And Austin had to battle through some injuries last season, and Shea Taylor, give him a whole year And so there's enough to build on from last season, bowl game and other work throughout the year. I'm excited to see what those two can do because I think they both can be all MAC performers this season.
With fall camp coming up, which position group or groups do you think is the most concerning?
I think, and concerning is a tough word, but I get what you're saying there. Probably what group needs to make the biggest strides or needs to gel and come together the quickest, and it would have to be the offensive line. And again, I gave verbal bouquets to Alan Rudolph in that offensive line, right? And they deserve it. So I'm excited to see the fall camp for them, to see how they gel and come together. Because right there, they're anchored in the middle with Parker Titsworth. And yeah, there are some guys that are gone. But when you've got the mind of Alan Rudolph and this staff and what they're able to do, yeah, I think that group, if they can come together and gel with some new pieces there, I think this offense is going to have a real good shot. And if they do, Ohio's going to have a leg up going into the season against Syracuse and beyond.
Well, you seem to be pretty high on that running back room, the linebackers, the defensive backfield. Yeah. What would you say is the main strength of this team going into 2024?
This is going to sound like, again, that I'm Peter positive for the program, for Peter positive's sake. But I look at what this program's been able to do under Frank Solich to Tim Albin. Look, Ohio had 3 wins in Tim's first season as head coach. And what they were able to do, back-to-back 10-win seasons, 5 straight bowl victories in a row. That's never happened in the MAC. Ohio and Marshall were the only teams in this league to be able to do it. And obviously Marshall in the Sun Belt now. So I think the biggest strength is that these guys, even through the transfer portal and all that, they know that the tradition lives and they have the buy-in to this tradition. And so I think that strength is on full display now. And Tim's really excited. He's ready to go. His coaching staff ready to go too. And yeah, there are going to be a lot of new pieces and parts to this team. But I think the strength of this team has to be the faith and belief of what Bobcat football has become now. And yeah, there's that one missing piece, and that's that elusive MAC championship. And I really wanted to call that MAC championship as a voice of the Bobcats. But whoever is the next voice of the Cats, I really hope that they get to call that first MAC championship for the first time since 1968, because I think this program has the ability to do it, and they've proven it. And so that tradition living, I think that's the strength of this team in 2024.
And then you kind of mention that being the strength, and some people say, well, Ohio lost a lot in the transfer portal and they're rebuilding, but they're not really rebuilding because, like you said, they're rebuilding is like starting from the bottom. Like, here's the very, very first brick. Here is the foundation. They already have that foundation. So it's not really a rebuilding. It's maybe a retooling or a reloading, however you want to say it. But I think a lot of people get confused when it talks about a rebuild, because that means you don't have anything. It sounds, Ohio's got a lot of rich tradition. So yeah, I wanted to, just kind of mention that there.
Absolutely. And I mentioned Tim's first season as a head coach, and that was a tough time because, Frank Solich stepped away. I had a great conversation with Coach last week, and we talked about a whole lot of things, my career and moving forward in the program, and to have him as a resource and to have him as somebody that laid that foundation. Also remember in the 60s, Bill Hess was an outstanding head coach here, legendary head coach here. MAC championship head coach here. So let's not forget about what they were able to do to help build that foundation and that piece. And Jim Grobe was a head coach here. And if you talk about just stand-up individuals and people, Jim Grobe went on to Wake Forest and helped build that program too under Dave Clawson now, and hopefully they have great success as well. But there's enough tradition here. There's that one missing piece. But what Ohio was able to do to build off of that 3-win season in a tough time into the 10 wins, I've got full faith that this ball club has the ability, with a fun schedule as well. You've got Kentucky and Syracuse on the schedule, and a good game to play against the Sun Belt and a really fun team like South Alabama, and the FCS games, Morgan State. I think there are going to be a lot of really good moments and opportunities this year for Ohio to have a really fun season.
So we've talked about the transfer portal a lot today, and obviously, you lost some players, you gained players, but what other kind of impacts have you seen the transfer portal and NIL, for that matter, kind of have there on the program?
It's interesting because we talk about the location of Athens, and it's as Rockwellian collegiate as a college campus gets. It's beautiful here. It is this pocket of Appalachian Ohio that just kind of opens up to you, and it's a wonderful campus. And Peden Stadium is a throwback. It's one of the oldest stadiums in college football. And when you come here to see a game or through our broadcast or the TV broadcast, you see that, and the change of the colors and the change of seasons. So you've got to embrace all that is college life here. And I think there's the other side of the transfer portal too, because sure, Curtis Rourke as the poster boy for being able to move on. And I texted with Curtis just yesterday. We're all rooting for his success at Indiana. But that opens up the opportunity for others that might want to get more playing time, might want to make their mark on this program to come in. And so the players leaving, that's not the full story. The full story is, and you mentioned a running back transfer from Northwestern. You talk about a wonderful institution, what they've been able to do. And I grew up a Northwestern fan as well. I think it's awesome that Ohio has that opportunity there. But you have guys that are able to come in and embrace all that is Bobcat football. And so the transfer portal, there are two sides to it. And Ohio restocked in a big-time hurry. But you're going to see the positive side from players coming in on display this year. And I think, it's tough down here with NIL, and there's not a lot of corporations here, but Bobcats are loyal. Bobcats all over the country care. I felt that love from Bobcat fans who have wished me well. Well, I'm the broadcaster. These guys are feeling that love as a player too. So I'm excited to see what those new players can bring coming in, because they're here because they know that Bobcat football could take them to the next level. And you mentioned earlier Walter Reynolds. He was a guy that played in multiple playoff games at Holy Cross. He had a great career on the FCS level from Detroit. Well, he made plays here at Ohio too. And you mentioned a Bucknell transfer on this roster. So you see the portal on full display. Guys that you wish well that have moved on, and guys that are coming in that want to elevate their college careers too.
Well, in this new age of college football, it seems more and more like the demands of the head coach are really turning into more of a general manager type role between recruiting new players, recruiting the same guys that you just had on your team a year or a game ago, the fundraising, and less of the X's and O's type role. Do you see that trend happening at Ohio there with Tim Albin?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'll say this, and it's hard for me not to get emotional about it, because I think Tim Albin is one of the best people that I've been around as far as any coach in any sport at any time in my broadcasting career. He's a down-to-earth guy. He cares. He and his wife, Brooke, are just tremendous people. He's a family guy, but he's Tim Albin from Oklahoma, right? And he's done great work here, and he's not about the flash. He drives the same car. I'm sure the family has other cars, but he drives the same car that he had back when he was in Oklahoma. And so he's as down to earth as it gets. He's a ball coach. He is demanding, but he's also caring. And so I think he's excited to get into fall camp now because he's excited to get into the X's and O's. But I think his down to earth nature, and I think his care, not only for the broadcaster, but also for his ball club and his players and his coaches, that's on full display. And that's probably more important than anything else, because he's not gonna lie to you. He's not going to tell you something just to get you in with his program. He's going to shoot you straight. And Tim Albin's a good man. And I think that what he can do with this program from an X's and O's perspective to develop these players, and just to have him setting the tone and that care of a Bobcat head coach, that's something special. And that's a carryover from Frank Solich, and that's into this program now.
Well, with all the changes the Bobcats experienced this offseason, what does success look like for them in 2024?
I think it's undefined right now. I think that because of all the change and because of all the new, but also because of the expectations that this fan base has, and rightly so, they should. That's back-to-back 10-win seasons. I think the level of success is going to be, are you in contention for a MAC title? That's got to be the standard here. You know, Ohio's picked fifth in this now 12-team top-to-bottom league. The divisions are gone in this league. And Tim and I and my outstanding broadcast partner, Rob Cornelius, who I worked with for every year here, and I think he's the best in the country, we talked about this. He said, and we said, all right, the top four, those are all teams that probably have way more back than Ohio does. And that's a credit to them. They're picked top four in the league. But then the first team after that is Ohio. And that's a nod to the development, the production, and Ohio turning from 3 wins to 10 wins just a couple of years ago. So I think success is going to be defined by the development of these guys that are in, and also being in contention late in the year. Because more often than not now, Ohio's been contention late in the year. And if Ohio can be there, this will be a heck of a job by Tim Albin and his staff. And you're going to see this community get behind this team. Because I know it's tough, midweek football and all that. But at the end of the year, when there's going to be fun midweek games, and I'm going to be listening, and I'm going to be watching too, and I'm going to be rooting on the Bobcats, I think Peden Stadium can be a really fun spot here late in the year.
Well, Russ, we've talked a lot of different things between new coordinators, the running game, offensive line. You've touched every unit. Is there anything else that you want to share or think that we need to know about this 2024 Ohio Bobcats football team?
Yeah, bottom line, and it's an interesting perspective and situation for me to be in, right? Because I've been tied to this program for 16 years, and I've gotten to put words to some of the greatest moments in Ohio University history. The 2009 division winner here on Black Friday against Temple, to the first bowl win in Boise, and all the fun that came from that, and the entire ride with Bobcat football has been really, really special. I couldn't have been the voice at a better time here at Ohio. And so more so than just this team, I just want folks to know about how tradition-rich this program is and how special of a place this is, how special this coaching staff is, the players that I've gotten to cover over the years. This has been a special part of my life. And those highlights and memories will live on. But I'm rooting for the Bobcats moving forward. I know that they've got the pieces in there to have a successful year, and I'm rooting for them against Syracuse and Kentucky and all the way through because this program's been good to me, and I'm rooting for them to have good happen for them too, not only in 2024 and beyond.
Well, Russ, we definitely wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors, but we want to thank you for taking time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. Stand up and cheer for the Cats and go Ohio, and we'll see what the Cats can do here in 2024.
All right, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please leave a rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you for all your support.